All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raising Good Parents. Today, I am really excited. This is not the typical parenting episode that you would think that you would see. I am actually talking with a local author who is releasing a book, and we actually go way back. And his name is Tony Ojeda, and I'm gonna go way back and tell you that when I was growing up, we were in the same parish, and we did a lot of different youth church activities. But the thing that stuck with me, and I actually told Tony this when I reached out to him because I saw something that he had posted online, and I was like, hey, I would love to have you on my podcast to talk this through. I told Tony that I still remember this, and it was in high school. We were all in the auditorium, just the boys, because of course this was like a boy-girl sort of development, puberty talk that was going on. And Tony is a very vibrant speaker, and he started the whole speech, and it stuck with me to this day. And I still, I shared it with Tony that this is what I remembered. He came out onto stage, and the first thing he said is, "Last night I made love to my wife." And these 15-year-old boys, all their jaws drop, and high fives and all those sort of things. And then he goes on to say how, and I won't get it right, but this is what I remember from it: how he came home from work and gave her a hug. He played with their kids. He cleaned up the dishes, did some other fatherly husbandry duties, and then gave her a kiss on the forehead and went to sleep. And that was what, making love was. And that just stuck with me, and it still has to this day. And so that was kind of how I reached out to Tony to say, hey, you had an impact on me and my marriage and my family and those sort of things. And so I'm really excited today to get to talk with him, because fast forward, let's see, 20 years, I saw online that he has a book coming out. And I thought, well, there's definitely some really interesting concepts in this book that I think apply to parents. So that was the longest winded introduction that I've ever done, Tony. But could you introduce yourself now and just like fill in a little bit of the details that I didn't share about you, your family, and the book that you've written?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Phil, for having me on the podcast. It's an honor, a pleasure to be with you. And thanks for sharing the story too. I don't remember that, but ever since you shared that with me a few weeks ago, I shared it with my wife and some other people, and they're like, "That's amazing! That many years later, he still remembers." So at least it had an impact, at least. But so yeah, I'm very happily married to my lovely bride, Cindy. We've been married for 26 and a half years now. And it's had its ups and downs, but overall, many, many blessings. Any marriage can have its ups and downs, but I've been very blessed to be married to her. We have 6 wonderful children. They range from the ages of 25 all the way down to 4.5. The 4.5-year-old is my favorite child. The other 5 kids know that. And
that's the only one that probably wouldn't listen to this, because the other ones probably have iPods or iPads or whatever, and they can hear this episode and then they'll know.
Yeah. And it's true. He is my favorite, even though sometimes he's a little ornery, kind of like me. But and so, yeah, I mean, I have had my own financial services firm and business for many years. And this year in January, we decided to create a new division called Made to Thrive. And it's a book. It's surrounded by a book that I originally wrote a little over 2 years ago and just did not publish it. I don't know what prevented me from doing that. But earlier this year, my son, Andrew, who works for me and does some of our coaching, he said, "Dad, you got to publish that book. It can have a tremendous impact on the lives of many, many people." And so he said, "Can I take a stab at doing some revisions in the book?" I said, "Sure." And then I reviewed his revisions and I said, "Okay, we're going to publish it."
Wow.
And it really is, we call it the 4 pillars. Okay. And we think every person has to have the 4 pillars. So for me, it's really the personal mission statement. And mine is to help improve the lives of others by serving them with great passion. So I think everyone should have something that they live their mission under. The second is to have a life vision in the 6 life domains in your life. And it's really important to have a vision for all of them at some time in the future. It could be 10 years, 15, it could be 3, whatever. And then developing goals that you have. And we always recommend somewhere between 8 to 12 goals a year and breaking them down by quarter so it's not overwhelming. And then the 4th pillar is really having action steps to achieve those goals. It's all moving in the direction of your life vision, but also following and living your life mission too. And so that's really the design of the book. And then we provide some other practices that I use that help us to thrive, that I
Right.
personally use myself. And it's
Hmm.
applicable to business, it's applicable to family life, to parenting, to finances, the whole ball of wax.
Well, I think that a lot of people, it sounds very driven by, business and accountability and those sort of things, but it's something that we can apply to our lives too. And I think, so many of us spend a lot of time in the work and optimizing at work, but then our family life, our personal life, our health, our well-being, our faith, all of those different things, um, we just kind of figure, well, those will get whatever is left over. And it sounds like what you're saying is what we can do is treat those components of our life as business practices as well, where we can set goals for our marriage, set goals for our parenthood, um, and see the return on investment of setting those goals, figuring out the action steps to take, and then see the results.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Phil. So I believe that you can only truly be successful in business if you're successful in the other life domains. And so I'm going to give you an example of this. So I'm not going to give you my whole life vision, but part of my life vision is spending a certain amount of time with each of my children every month or every couple of weeks, whatever it is.
Love
And
that.
I've got this broad spectrum, right? I've got one child who lives in Fargo, North Dakota. And
Hmm.
so you have to figure out that. And so for me, being a parent is important all the way through. It's from the time they're a baby until I'm no longer here on the face of this earth. And so if I am not intentional with designing my life and the vision for my life to make sure that my kids are important and I'm making them a priority and I'm being very intentional with that, then I'm going to be a bad dad.
Mm.
It's one thing to be a terrible father to the 4.5-year-old and not be, spend time with him and discipline him appropriately. But if I ignore the other kids, the one that's in high school, the one that's in 8th grade right now, or the 3 adult children, I'm not being a really good father. It's the same in
Right.
marriage. I'm very intentional with my marriage. One of the things that I have in my life vision is a weekly date with my wife.
Hmm.
Well, if that's not a habit we're in right now, then I got to establish goals and action steps to actually make that happen. And so if you can be more effective as a father, a mother, a wife, a husband within the household, you will be much more effective in the other areas of your life as well.
Well, I can see that in unpacking everything that you just said there. I think that is so important that as parents we can get into the weeds of all of the different things that are going on. And if we have young children, there's all the different things that go along with them. And as they get older, it doesn't get easier. It just gets more challenging or more complex in different ways. But if we can set those habits in place, and if you could see my bookshelf, which you can't because my standing desk now is in the way, but I've got, so many books on atomic habits and all of the different strategies that you can use to put those things and insert those things into your routine. So that I love what you said about making time and having time goals to spend with each child, because you can just get wrapped up in work. You can get wrapped up in things around the house to do, or everything that's going on in the news, and you can neglect those things, and honestly they'll probably not call you out on it
Yep.
because you love them and they love you, and they won't say anything, because maybe in the past when they said, could you spend more time with me, you said, well, look at all the things that I'm doing and how hard I'm working and everything like that. And instead what we're doing is training ourselves to say, it's important that I put this time on the calendar every week, and this is specific time for this specific child that we're going to do something, rather than just, oh, it's Saturday, let's go to the zoo, or let's go.
Right.
Like, those things are nice. Taking the kids to Disney World is nice, but you don't do that on a regular old Tuesday when you could make dinner with one of your children, or get coffee, or cuddle and read a book or something like that. Those are the little moments that they'll remember more than the once every 3 years, once every 10 years trip to Disney World that makes you feel good.
Yeah, so that's so true. And one of the elements within the book and that we coach on is designing a perfect week. And most people don't do that. They just kind of randomly live their life. And there's some advantages to doing that too. But the disadvantage is you can get sidetracked and
Hmm.
you will not do those things that are important. And so, I have a perfect week that I've designed. It does get changed and it does get modified. I'm going to give you an example of that. So my 13-year-old daughter is a gymnast. We also
Hmm.
homeschool her. So 2 days a week, she actually homeschools in the afternoon because she's in the gym at 7:30 in the morning. Well, my perfect week really doesn't involve taking someone to gymnastics, but in this season in my life, it is part of my perfect week because she has to get to gym. So
Right.
I'm going to take her to gym, and that 15-minute drive is one-on-one time with just
Mm-hmm.
her. And so that perfect week can be designed differently in the season of life you might be in. And the other reason that perfect week is important, and I violate it sometimes, like yesterday, total violation. Okay, so I'm being full disclosure here. I had a very busy day at work, several phone calls, several different meetings, and it seems like, and a lot of this is really good stuff. I'm like excited and I'm passionate, and I am just getting consumed by it because I'm so excited by what I'm doing. And pretty soon it's 5 o'clock, and I'm like, just do this one. And that's 5:15, and then it's 5:30, and guess what? I left the office at 6.
Mm.
Well, I'm never in the office, or very rarely in the office past 5. It was a violation of my perfect week. I get home, eating dinner by myself. Everyone had already eaten. And then after dinner, I am exhausted because I spent too much time in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was not the best father, especially to the 4.5-year-old last night. I did not spend the time I should have spent with him. So designing a perfect week that you're very intentional with, and then doing your very best to stick to it.
Well, it's easy if you don't have that perfect week designed, which I could pull out. My bag is somewhere over here, but I have my planner that has like a version of my perfect week. And you're totally right that, as seasons change, not just the actual seasons, but of life, that perfect week changes. But if you're not intentional about it, then you wouldn't even think that, well, I violated my perfect week. You would just give yourself the credit that, well, it was a big day. Look at all the stuff that I got done. Ain't I something?
Yeah.
Whereas instead you can say, well, how could I do better? Or how could I get back on track and reset my priorities so that I can make the time for those that need me?
Yeah. One other thing I'll say too is one of the things I do is reflect weekly for sure. Try to establish a habit of doing it daily. And I reflect on, did I live on my mission today? Did I help improve the lives of others and serve them with great passion? And it starts with the family.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to say, man, I was great at work. People loved me. I helped them. I made a big impact on their lives. But if I failed to live my mission within my family, I have to make adjustments either the next day or the next week. And that idea of reflecting on what is your mission and did I live it within the most important part of my life, which is my wife and my children. So that's another element I think is really important, is just taking the time to reflect weekly, daily, or whatever it might be.
Definitely. And what did I do good? Because that affirms me to keep doing those things. Like, what differences did I make? And then what could I do better? And I mean, I know a lot of people like hate Mondays, but I actually really like Monday because it's like it's a fresh start, like a new year to like actually say, okay, how can this week be even more perfect than the last week? Or how can I quit doing those things that I was doing and instead focus on this thing in that week? So that totally fits with my worldview as well. I think a lot of parents are probably hearing this right now and thinking, well, I am so far away from that. I am so deep in the weeds. I have, all of these commitments and all of these things on my plate, and hearing this just overwhelms me because I'm nowhere near that. And that's totally fine that that's where they're at. How does one start on that journey to having that perfect week, to having those mission statements? What's the first small step? I mean, other than getting Made to Thrive, the book that's coming out on December 13th when this podcast episode airs, where does somebody start in that journey to, having those things in place?
So I'll just give you a brief answer well, maybe not a brief answer, but I'll tell you, it really starts with your mission. And the way I look at that, it's why do you exist on this earth? Why are you created? So being a Catholic, I grew up with the Baltimore Catechism, that we were created to know God, love God, and to serve him in this world and to be happy with him in the next. So that's
right.
In the idea, it's everybody's general mission is that. But to really figure out, why am I here? And what drives me every day to get up? So I give the example, like in the book, if you're a garbage collector, I'd hate to do that, by the way. Part of that would fall within my mission, right? I could help improve the lives of others by picking up garbage, right? I just couldn't do it with great passion. But for a garbage collector, they might be living their mission by their job, because they may be the type of person that likes to always clean it up after everybody at a social gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Or if somebody needs a hand cleaning up, sticks in their yard after a storm or helping clean up a garage, they're the person that loves doing that, right? And so it's really figuring out your why in life and writing your mission. That's the first step in really understanding that. The second step really is putting together that life vision. And again, the book is going to go into the 6 life domains and how you go about writing a vision. But it's really, what would I like my ideal life to be like in the future,
Mm-hmm.
3 years or 5 years from now? And then the goals and action steps come after that. And it really is a simple step. But I always just say, start with the mission.
Okay.
I would encourage you, your listeners and viewers to get the book, obviously, because I think it would help. And also they could take a look at our blog, because we probably posted, I don't even know, 30 or 35 blog posts, and it covers all these areas too.
Awesome. I think that is the right place to start too. And that makes sense to me and most people can jive with that because they work somewhere where they have a mission statement, and then things that we do or don't do at work or decisions that we're making get tested against that mission statement. Well, if we have one for ourselves, if we have one for our family, which that's something that we did years ago, is my wife and I, when we were on vacation, and we're like, we're going to make a family mission statement, and then we're going to test the decisions that we make against that family mission statement. Because if we do that, then we have a starting place. And when things come up, when opportunities come up or stresses come up, or adversity or challenges or joys come up, we can say, does this fit with our family mission statement? Does this fit with my individual mission statement? And move out from there to decide on all the different things that we do.
Yeah, I tell you, that's critically important. It's great that you've done that for your family, because it should be your guiding principle. Are we violating it? Are we living it? And if we're living it, let's affirm that. Let's
Mm-hmm.
continue to do the things that we're doing every day. And then even talking a little bit more about the vision. So, I've got the whole spectrum of different kids' ages. And so
Right.
the example for me is the amount of time I spend with each child. And so one of the goals I had to establish was a habit of spending time with Lindsay, who's now 20 years old. And some people are like, oh, you got to actually put a recurring appointment in with your daughter. Isn't she important enough that you could just do that? No, she's that important that
Right.
I do want to schedule it. I don't ever want to forego that. And if it's a recurring meeting between us for coffee, it's going to happen. So for somebody who is, the parent of a younger children, maybe they just feel so scattered that 3 years from now, they want a little bit more semblance of peace in their home. And maybe they think to themselves, goodness gracious, we should be praying at least once a week as a family.
Right.
That's part of your vision. And so then you have to formulate goals and make action steps to make sure that you're trying to achieve that vision of that once a week family prayer, or whatever it might be. Maybe it is once a week, for busyness of families, we're getting together for dinner once a week as an entire family.
Right.
And that's important. So it's really what you want your vision to look like, and then implementing these habits and these goals to be able to do that.
That is, I think that is so important. And I know we're just preaching back and forth to the choir to each other here, but I really do think that if you want those things to happen, and if you want to, if you say, here's what it would look like for me as a perfect parent, well, it's not going to happen unless you're intentional about it. And the way to be intentional about it is to make it really hard for it not to happen. So if you have a recurring meeting that pops up on your phone or on your Google Calendar or wherever that says, I'm getting coffee with my daughter, well, we're getting coffee unless I cancel it, or no show, in which case I have to explain why that is. Whereas otherwise it's like, well, it's been 4 months since we've gotten coffee. Do you want to get coffee? Yeah. How's next Thursday? No, that doesn't work. Text message trails off, another 3 months passes. And that's for a 20-year-old. But if we're talking about, well, when did I last get down on the ground and play with my 2-year-old? Or, things in the house gets busy and you have a lot going on, and there's dishes to be done and counters to be cleaned and garbage to be taken out and all those different things. Well, when was the last time that I spent 5 minutes just sitting on the ground, letting my 2-year-old crawl all over me and roughhousing with our 4-year-old, or whatever it is? If instead you can schedule those things because they're so important. I just love that look at it. Like, yes, it's that important that I'm going to actually put it on the schedule, because I put all these other meetings with these people that I don't know that, are business associates on the schedule, because that's important. Well, then I should schedule time to sit down and listen to my 7-year-old play piano. Like that's a legitimate thing to put on a schedule.
Yeah. It is true. You just sit at the piano or with a 13-year-old, I don't know if it was last night or the night before, taking the time to actually listen to what she memorized, a Ronald Reagan speech. She memorized the first 2 paragraphs, and to actually take time to listen to her. The
Right.
idea of wrestling around or crawling around with the younger kids. Another area of the life domain with your vision is physical, right? And if you don't take care of yourself physically, then you will be too exhausted at night to wrestle around with the kids.
Right.
And I found myself to be guilty of that from time to time. And so again, I've got that in my life vision. What do I want physically to look like? Not physically, I'm never going to be, what I looked like 30 years ago, but I want to be in good shape, right? I want to be at a certain weight. I want to be working out so many times a week so I can be a more effective dad. When I spend time with the kids or my wife, I want to be engaged with them. And if I'm physically just totally exhausted, well, that's the problem. I didn't take the time to be very intentional with the physical outlook of my life, and therefore I'm failing as not being a good enough husband and father.
Right. And I think that it's easy to just make the excuse if we don't hold ourselves accountable for that of, well, it was a really busy day today and look at all the great things that I did. And now I'm just exhausted and I just want to watch Netflix, rather than, connect with my spouse, connect with my child. But if you do have that energy, and if you give it the intention that it deserves, like I need to reserve enough energy today to go home and be present at the dinner table. And if I am expending my physical, emotional, mental energy so much in what I'm doing that I have nothing left when I go home, well, then I need to work my way back and change something earlier in the day to hold on to those reserves, or inject some new routine that gives me back that energy so that I can be present for what my mission is, first and foremost.
Yeah, that's so true. I think about, how many times that I failed to do this, right? And it's when you become an author and you write a book about it, it's like, same thing when I used to do a lot of public speaking. Speaking helped me to relearn. Hey, you're saying this. Remember what you just said. It's the same with writing a book. You're like, okay, where am I at with all of this stuff?
Right.
And so even doing this podcast is a great reminder. Okay, I don't want to harp on myself and say, man, I'm terrible. But there are times that I'm not so good at this.
Mm-hmm.
And just finding constant reminders that, okay, we can do this. And again, I'll go back to that idea of that weekly reflection. And I'm going to be going on a retreat next weekend. And I do it once a year toward the end of the year and really reflect on the year. And then really to set myself up for success for the next year. And again, it really comes down to what are the most important things. And if I am failing, and again, I fail every day, but if I am 90% successful as a husband and father, I'm pretty dang happy. 100% would be great, but if I'm 90%, that's better than most. But if I'm at 40 or 50% and I reflect on that, I'm like, I haven't been living my mission with my family. I need to make some changes.
Mm-hmm.
And taking that time to reflect allows us to go, okay, I'm going to establish some concrete goals to do this next year. And so that's another thing I'd really encourage people as they get toward the end of the year here to really take time to do that too.
Well, it's been a crazy year, and I think everybody will hopefully give themselves grace, with how things have gone this year, but say, okay, this year went the way it went. I'm going to get the Made to Thrive book. I'm going to learn from that and have 2021 just knock it out of the parks and, turn the roller coaster the other direction, because I've got a plan. And so I think that is what I'm most excited about. People that read your book will take away is you can have a plan, and then you can make small steps to get to where you want to be, and listen back to this episode in a year from now and be like, well, yeah, I actually do have a mission. I do have these things. I'm not perfect. I'm a 90% or 70% given on the day, but 2 years ago I was at 40 or 30 or 50%. Yeah. And so I've made progress, and here's how I can keep making progress. Well, obviously I've drank the Kool-Aid before we even talked that all of this is very important. I will make sure in the show notes and include the made to thrive.live, which is your website. The book launches on December 13th. And so we will make sure and have all of the information so that people can swipe right over to get a copy of the book, get their new year started off on the right foot, and maybe even give one as a gift to a family member, or decide to read it as a couple, and implement those things, together, and look at it not just as a one person, but as a family. How are we going to do these things?
Well, I very much appreciate that, Phil. I think, people who've read it said it's really good. The content is excellent. So I hope it's the case, and I really do hope it will be helpful to people.
I think it will be. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, will you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos that I put out? And if you'd like to learn more or watch another video, you can click right over here to keep going. Have a good day. Keep up the good work.